Yes,
Possibly,
ma'am. That's what they're predicting. About the time we thaw out, we get some more. So,
Well, if it, it's going to get into the 30s today. So if any of my pipes burst during the meeting, I may have to turn it over to the vice chairman.
All right, Chairman, I have 9:30 if you want to kick it off. And remember, I'm gonna if you're making if there's a lot of background noise, I'll probably be muting some folks. But other than that, I think we're ready to go.
All right. Well, welcome to the Natural Resources Commission meeting, the first one of 2024. Certainly looking forward to a great year. And we just try to accomplish a lot of great things for our citizens and our state and just do the very best job we can. So welcome everyone, and let's get going here. Why, I trust that we have a commission and staff that are a lot smarter than the chairman, and I know that y'all are going to keep me on track, clean up all my mistakes. And so let's get going. Megan, if we could, with the roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Brewer.
I'm here.
Commissioner Reeves.
Yes, here.
Commissioner Pointer. Commissioner Leggett.
Here.
Commissioner Bush.
Here.
Commissioner William Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Neil Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Burr. Commissioner Burr. Commissioner Eddie Glover.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
All right, that's wonderful. Wonderful. Great to start the new year out with a quorum. All right, so everyone has received a copy of the minutes. So let's look at those, and is there any corrections to be made or any changes or anything wrong that anybody has? If not, do I hear a motion to adopt those minutes?
I'll make motion, William Anderson.
Second, Neil Anderson.
All right, we got a motion and second that we adopt the minutes. Is any discussion on that motion? If not, all in favor, yes.
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 Opposed, no. All right, so the minutes are adopted. Our first order of business here is coming from our director. It's reimbursement options. So, Chris, do we turn the table over to you now?
yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Commissioners, at the very first meeting of the year, you all are to consider your reimbursement options. And so what this is the state's ability to compensate you for your time and your travel expenses, et cetera. So I've provided in your packet a list of those options. Option one you'll see is just expense reimbursement. This is what you all have typically elected to do, which is if you travel for a commission meeting, you get reimbursement for your mileage, or if we go out of town and you have to spend the night because of state business, then we'll reimburse you for your hotel expenses and meals and lodging at that time based on the same rate that state employees receive. You do also have an option for a stipend by law. You guys have not elected to do that. And then option three is you could combine those should you choose. But and then option four obviously is no reimbursement at all. But again, you guys typically do option number one, but I will leave that up to the body to decide what you would like to do.
Okay, we hear this report on the reimbursement options. So we have discussion on that. All right. Does someone have a motion that they want to put?
I would move that we continue with option one. Expense.
I'll second that. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. if our secretary needs any help on, please let us know on motions and seconds. So we have a motion before us. So do we have discussion on that? Does everybody understand what we're doing here? All right, no discussion. So let's vote on that. All in favor? Yes.
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 Opposed? No. Okay, and that does pass. So now we're going to move into our business, and the first order of business that we have is our director's report.
All right. So just give you all some updates on things that we've worked on since November. It's actually, even though we had the holidays and all that, it's been very busy. First thing that we've been working on is our general obligation bond program. As you know, this is one of our programs that we can help finance projects with. And so we've been going systematically through the processes that are required to do that. So we have gone before the CFO of the state, so through the Department of Finance and Administration. We've also been before Legislative Council and received favorable review. And now we have a proclamation, a draft proclamation at the governor's office, which we have received favorable response, and look for that proclamation to be approved hopefully this month. And then in February, what we will bring before you all, once we receive the proclamation, is a series resolution that will be before you for approval to allow us to essentially issue bonds in different series over the next 2 years. We've also been busy on administrative rules. I think you'll see on the agenda we have 3 today. But
Chris,
yes,
this is
sir.
Roy. May I make a comment?
Yes, sir.
As an old bond dealer, interest rates, I think probably most would agree, are headed down. So I would not get in a big hurry to sell additional bonds until you had to have the money, just as a word of caution.
Yes, sir. I think we're going to be in a position where we have to have the money for a couple.
Sure, yes.
projects. But,
Yes,
but I
saw
agree
that.
with you.
I saw that, but anyway.
Yes,
just
sir.
a suggestion.
Yep. No, advice taken. I think if we don't need the cash, we won't be issuing bonds.
Okay.
So appreciate that input. As I was saying, we're working on a lot of different administrative rules right now. So you have 3 before you today. Likely we'll see some others before the end of the year, just because of legislative changes that were made during the legislative session. And just to remind everybody kind of what that process is like, once the staff makes the changes to the rules, we submit those to you all for preliminary approval. So you see the draft, you approve the draft, and then we go out for public comment. So that's a 30-day public comment period. Typically what's incorporated in that too is a public hearing. And then we come back to you all with the final after 30-day public comment and hearing. And then ultimately those have to go back before the legislature to legislative review. And then there's governor's office approval in there too. So just let y'all know that that's a big effort that we're working on right now. We also held our conservation district strategic planning. So we did a 2-day conservation district strategic planning, had a lot of good partners there, a lot of great discussion. We hosted that at the Nature Center in Little Rock. Appreciate William Anderson. He was our commission representation on there, but a lot of good discussion. We've actually started working on some things as a result of that. Debbie Moreland's been hosting basically bi-weekly calls for us to discuss actions that are going on. And then we have started a process of trying to determine or basically identify those natural resource needs from our perspective that can be shared at locally led meetings. So that's something we're currently working on, so that we're all basically aligned when it comes to what are some of the needs across the state in utilizing conservation districts for that conservation delivery. We continue to work on the Alliance project. In fact, I was hopeful that our appropriation to be able to spend the dollars under that project would have been before peer committee yesterday, but it was canceled. So It'll actually be rescheduled for next Tuesday, but we're in the process of doing a training with the districts, working on agreements with AECD and the districts. So hope to have that project up and running here in next couple of months. We hosted Brigadier General Kimberly Peoples from the Mississippi River Division with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. It was a great visit to have that high-level leadership here in the state, especially with many of the projects that we're working on with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, ranging from irrigation projects to the state water plan. We've got some other very specific river projects. So it was a great visit. We just appreciate her time here. Speaking of the Corps, we have two ongoing projects. State water plan, they've just about finalized the documents to have the contractor on board. I expect us to hopefully have our kickoff meeting with the contractor and the Corps within the next week or so. I know Jason Funkhauser is on here. Maybe he could provide a little bit of update when it's his time to give a report later. And then we have a new project that we're excited about, which is a levee inventory project. So we're in the very, very early stages of that, of working with the Corps, Little Rock District, and the Commissioner of State Lands Office. And Commissioner Leggett has been very helpful there and just making some connections there. So I'm excited about that project. And I think that'll be a really good thing for the state because we don't have a great inventory of our levees across the state. And that actually concludes my report, but I did want to give one reminder as part of this is don't forget about your statements of financial interest. You received an email from Linda Lepke, and just remind everybody that those are due January 31st. So, but you should have an email with all the documents in it. Mr. Chairman, that actually concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Very good report. Now, when we get into talking, I know this is later on, and perhaps I'm bringing it up out of order. Correct me if I am. But when we get into discussing those rule changes, are you going to wait till later to give us our guidelines for that, or did you want that to be part of your report? I mean, there's certain ways that we have to approach this, I know.
No, so when each presenter today, when they go over those rules, because they're all in different stages. So like Jay Whisker on the Act 605 rules, those are at the final stage, at least before this body. They still have to go before the legislature, but the ones that Megan are presenting on are in the very early stage. So they still haven't had 30-day public comment. So in each case, each presenter will describe a little bit about where they are in the process, and then I can fill in any gaps.
Okay. All right. Forgive me for getting that out of order kind of there.
No, sir, not at all. Good question.
All right. So let's move on to our financial report. Are you with us, Mr. Zoggy?
Actually, he's not. You have me today. Fred Weedor, Deputy CFO for the Agriculture Department.
Wow, man.
How about that?
I happen to know Mr. Weedor, and we've got two good gentlemen heading that up, and we look forward to this, Fred.
All right. It'll be short and sweet. Is the way I roll with this. I hope you all can see that on your screen better than I can. I have another one over here on my other screen, blown up a little bit. That's probably better. All right, the financial report in the Water Development Fund. We began the fiscal year with $11,286,018.52, and for the first 6 months of this fiscal year, we have collected $194,173.17 in interest on those fund balances. Repayments from borrowers been $1,895,477.48. We've had other reimbursements of 12,341. And the disbursements for the first 6 months, you can see there for some operating expense, some wages, and various grant payments that were made from the WDF. Those total disbursements are $640,479.45, giving us a fund balance as of December 31, $12,743,530.95. And below you see the projects approved thus far through the last meeting of this body. In addition to that, a reserve for emergency projects of 1 million. So that totals $9,982,868.46 in basically approved projects that haven't been dispersed, giving us total unobligated funds of $2,760,662.49 that are available for consideration for new projects out of the Water Development Fund. Any questions about that one before I move on to the next?
I got one question.
Mhm.
Are these invested? I say the interest income. Is this, how are the investments handled?
This is in a state treasury cash fund.
That's what I assumed.
And so the state treasury, they pay interest based on all the statewide funding within the treasury, so to speak.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Okay.
And it's a fairly competitive rate. I don't know, with as much as we have, I don't know that we could do any better and stay within the Board of Finance rules.
So I'm not suggesting we could. I'm just curious if it was invested with all the state funds or if we handle it separately.
It's along with the entire state treasury that they invest.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? All right, let's move over to the Water and Sewer and Solid Waste Fund. We began the fiscal year with $15,764,762.16. We have had repayments from borrowers, $3,967,387.34. And the disbursements for the first 6 months of this fiscal year, you can see those there for 2 loans, totaling $147,759.20, giving us a ending fund balance at December 31st of $19,584,390.30. Below that, you can see the projects that have been approved but not dispersed through the last meeting of this body. And adding to that, a $1 million reserve for emergency projects. That gives us a total of $15,681,833.70. I believe that is. I can't even see that. Yes. Okay. So the amount available for future projects to be considered by this body is $3,902,856.60. And back to Mr. Reeves' question, this is not in a cash and treasury fund. It's a different type of fund within the state treasury, and it does not pay interest.
The water, sewer, and solid waste does not pay interest?
That's correct.
Why?
Well, it's I'm not certain about that, other than it's a obligated fund that I suppose the state treasury doesn't feel like they can tie it up for any length of time.
That's a waste. I mean, that money's laying there idle somewhere, not earning any interest.
There could be some statutory requirements that prevent that also. I'm not certain of that. I just brought that up since you
Well,
asked.
there aren't, it's still a waste.
You're probably very right there. All right, any questions about the WSSW projects? All right, moving on to the general obligation bond funds. We began the fiscal year with a balance of 54,609,440.21. We have not issued any bonds thus far this fiscal year, so there's no proceeds. And you can
it's not
see
paying interest either, and this one doesn't not earning interest either.
that's correct. And the disbursements during the first 6 months of this fiscal year, you see those for 3 projects that total 24,210,476, leaving a ending balance of 30,398,964.21. And you see the approved but undispersed projects that have been approved by this body through the last meeting that total 30,683,166.63, which leaves us with an over obligation of 284,202.42. And there are some new obligations shown here that I suppose you all will consider at some point in this meeting. And taking those into account, then we would be obligated in the CGO bond fund 1,623,202.42.
What happens in that scenario when we're over obligated?
I would assume that means that you can't fund all these approved projects until additional bonds are sold or to add additional funding.
Joanne, it's a timing issue. I think I don't think Fred, I don't believe this prohibits us from funding anyone. I've seen this number much larger, but I don't think that keeps us from approving any new projects, because like you see now, we've got 30 million or so approved, but they haven't been drawn. Some of these projects are 2 and 3 year projects that takes to spend the money. Others get approval and then as a backup, and then find better financing or something that's more palatable to them. So it sits there for a good while before they come back to us, and they are and they give the money back that they never use. So
Okay.
we got a lot of time on that.
All right. Thank you for that explanation. That clears that up.
Yeah, it's indeed a timing issue for as long as some of these projects take to get ready to proceed. So I'm sure staff is keeping a close eye on all of that though, and working that out.
Yes, we are. We watch that very, very close and monitor a lot of those projects. And the other thing too is sometimes projects come in under budget, sometimes they come in over budget. And then sometimes they don't move for years and years and years. So, but we are watching it very closely. My goal ultimately is to reduce that number down, negative number even further, because we're getting closer to the end of our bond authority. So we've got to tighten that up a little bit more.
All right.
Any other questions for me? And if not, that concludes my report.
Do we have any other questions for Fred on the finances here? Well, Fred, you just did a bang up job.
Well, I do have one other item though.
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. It's kind of separate from this. You all should have received at some time in the past the legislative audit report for the entire Department of Agriculture for the year ended June 30, 2022. And this is probably the first opportunity for this body to formally acknowledge and approve that audit report. While the audit report is for the entirety of the Department of Agriculture, there's a good bit of Natural Resource Commission specific information in there, especially pertaining to loans and the bonds. That is part of that report. There were no findings in this report, nothing reportable. And I would just ask that you all approve the legislative audit report through June 30th, 2022.
Fred, do you mean by that we need to take action on that?
Yes.
Ideally, yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, Chris, you want us to take that up now or later, or what's the game plan?
Take it up now, Mr. Chairman. I didn't realize that had to have a vote, but if Fred's saying it needs one, then I think you all should take that now.
Okay, so what the action we would be taking here is to prove the overall audit report of the entire Department of Agriculture. So what's the will here? What do we want to do about that? Let's see if we can get a motion before we have discussion. Do we want to?
I so move to approve the audit report and congratulate the staff with no findings.
Do we have a second to that?
Second, Roy, second.
All right, we got a motion and second that we approve the overall Department of Agriculture audit report. How about discussion on that? Is there any questions or discussion? If not, we're going to take a vote on it. All in favor of approving this audit, say yes.
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 Opposed, no. And with that, the State Natural Resources Commission does approve that audit.
Thank you very much. That makes the auditors happy when they see that in the minutes.
Okay, well, Fred, you just did a bang up job, buddy. I want to say again.
Thank you very much.
Usually when a CFO puts numbers that small in front of me, I'm somewhat skeptical, but I just believe you checked out 100% there, buddy.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah. All right, we're going to move on. Getting into our talking about our rules changes and approval here. And let me say that, and Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong on this. You are the man in the catch seat here on putting up documents and stuff. So if anybody needs any documents or anything like that, or any explanation, you might not be able to, if you're compromised on computers like me, maybe you can't jump back and forth as easy. So Ryan, you've got all the documents covered for us. Is that
I
right?
do, sir. I do, sir. Yes, you can do anything you need. I'm gonna go through the packet, but if you need something else, let me know.
All right, man, you the guy. All right, so let's move on here to the water provider final rules amendment.
Okay, thank you all commissioners. My name is Jay Whisker. As you may or may not recall, in November, we saw this as a preliminary, and it was brought to you earlier. This is brought to you because Act 545 and Act 691 of 2023 changed some of the rules that we need for Act 605. So it was brought to you, and I'm going to go over the 4 changes that were required due to the new acts that were passed in 2023. First, there was an eliminate the need for a rate study prior to a major development. The second was to clarify when to use funds from a refurbishment account. Third was to add flexibility to time required to enact new rates. And then the fourth was to move the deadline requiring board members to receive training, and that deadline was moved to the end of 2023. So with that being said, we brought it to y'all in November. You did approve to move forward with the, we have a 30-day appeal process and an actual meeting. So we advertised that in the Democrat Gazette December 10th through the 13th. I received, it was my email and my email address and my address was put in the paper to receive any written comments. We did not receive any in the time allotted. We also had a public hearing on January the 4th at 2 p.m. The only people that attended were several workers with the Arkansas Natural Resources and some agriculture people as well. And so there were no objections to any of the rules changes with which we asked for. So at this point, the time has ended, and we are looking for you to pass the rule in its final stage so that it can go to the legislature and then, of course, the governor. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Okay, and again, don't let me beat this dead horse too much, but this is, and maybe this is more for my understanding than anybody else. Everybody probably understands everything except me, but this doesn't, it's not the end of this. This is just kind of the start of it. From here, it goes, it has a long track to go. It has to go to the legislature, and it has to go, I think, public hearing and whatever. So whatever we say here today, you know, there will be a time for public comment.
Mr. Chairman, this one has actually already gone through public comment. So this one's at a different stage than the other 2 rules that are before you. So this one, Jay brought this one to you in November, to you all in November, and then we had a public comment period since November in a public hearing. So that part's already happened. Next stage for this will be going before the Rules Committee at the legislature.
Okay, thank you for correcting me there.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, any comments on this? We need to talk about this any, or?
Jay, would you go over the in 691? The first one I wrote down was eliminate rate study. Can you go into that a little bit?
Sure, I'm happy to go into that. I think your question was to go into the changes, the 4 separate changes again. Okay, first was there used to be you needed to do a rate study before you did a major development. That's no longer the case. A rate study is now due based on the population that you serve. If you are 500 or less, your rate study is due by June 30th of 2024. If you are between 500 and 1,000, you are due the following year of June 30th, 2025. And if you're over 1,000, then you're due June 30th of 2026. So that was the first major change. The second was when to use funds from a refurbishment account. We had always allowed people to put funds into the account. It just didn't say you could take them out. This says that you can take them out. It was never meant for you not to take them out, but it allows you to do so more easily. It also talked about the new rates. If you have a study that requires new rates, it did ask for you to enact them within that year or within 2 years, depending on how much they went up. This now says you can do it within 1 year, 2 years, or whatever your rate study asks for. So that's added into it. And then the fourth one, of course, is to move the board members receiving training. That was due at the end of 2022. It has now been moved for the board members to be trained by the end of 2023. And people are currently turning in those documentations as we speak.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Does that kind of clear it up?
Jay,
There?
Joanne, you're fading in and out. You may be in very poor service area.
She must be up around Leslie or something. All right, we're not being, we aren't able to hear Joanne right now.
That I have visited.
Chris, did you text her or something and say that we can't hear? Is that, would that, or so what should we do here? Wait or go on?
Mr. Chairman, I think probably should go on for the sake of time. Just reminder that we adjust the rules based on what changed in the law. So when the law changes happen during the 2023 session, we're coming back just to making the rules with the law.
All right, let me ask you, do it have to be a majority of the board? Okay. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you
Yeah, I
now.
believe we got you now, Joanne.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Right. The only other question I had, Jay, was the board certification. Does that have to be a majority of the board or the entire board?
That rule did not change. It does ask that the majority of the board either have the training or 10 years of experience, or it would be looked at to put you in fiscal distress. So that's what it calls for. If the majority of the board does not have the training or 10 years, then that would be looked at. So that didn't change. It's just the majority still.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Chris reminded us of something important here. We're making these rules to match the law. So law has already been passed by the legislature, and these rules are matching what the law is. Did I say that right, Chris?
Yes, sir, you did.
All right. That's good discussion on this. What about other discussion? Do we have anybody else have anything else to bring up about this rule? Well, if we don't, I'm going to call for a vote on it. A motion on it. Is there a motion to approve this rule?
William Anderson makes motion.
All right, we have a motion and second. Do we have discussion on that motion? If not, all in favor, yes.
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 Opposed, no. And so we do approve that rule amendment. All right, we'll go on to the next one here, which is repeal of the poultry registration rule. And Megan Perkins is going to lead us in that.
Good morning. just to kind of recap of where this rule is in the process and even the next one before we get into what the changes are. So these two rules that I have for you are as a result of legislation from the 2023 session. So we are taking these rules to mirror the law as it currently stands. And this is the first step in this process, is to present to you these draft
Mallory,
rules.
Yes.
this is Mike Daniels.
And then
Hey, I think I'm only getting part of the information.
and if these draft rules are approved by the commission, they will then go to a 30-day comment period. The notice will be posted on the department's website and also distributed to anybody that requests them. Once that 30-day public comment period is over, then we would have a hearing for these rules. And then they would come back to you as the commission for your final approval, and then they would take the next steps to the legislature and then the governor. So again, these two rules that I'm presenting are in that very early draft stage for your consideration to go into the public comment period. So the first rule we have is the rules governing.
Hey, Megan,
Yes,
can I
sir.
interrupt you? Can I interrupt?
Sure.
I'm sorry, but can I interrupt you just a minute? Mike, did your question get answered?
Mr. Chairman, I think he was talking to somebody else.
I think he was on a phone call.
Oh, okay. All right. Excuse me. I apologize so much about interrupting you.
No problem, no problem. So the first rule we have is Title 19, the rules governing the poultry feeding operation registration program. So Act 600 during the 2023 legislative session moved that program from the Natural Resources Commission to the Department of Agriculture. It also repealed the subset, added that portions of the registration program may be delegated to the conservation districts, and then also that they would retain the annual registration fee. So this rule would be completely repealed since we no longer are the administrative rule within the conservation section, natural resources division. This is program is now being administered by the livestock and poultry division, and they will be promulgating a rule within their or the department will be promulgating a rule for this program. So this is a complete repeal of Title 19 from the commission's rules. Happy to take any questions on this one.
We have any questions for Megan on this rule? Okay, hearing none, so we're going to take action on this rule separate from the next one. We're going to take action separately on these rules.
Yes,
Is that
sir.
correct?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Okay, so all right, we've heard the explanation of the rule here. We don't have any questions so far. Do I hear a motion on this?
William Anderson makes motion.
Anderson second.
Okay, we have a motion and second that we approve this rule amendment. Is there any questions on that motion? Discussion. Since hearing none, we'll take a vote on it if we're ready. All in favor of this motion, say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Okay, that passes. All right, Megan. You're on stage.
There we go. Ryan got to it. All right. So the next proposed rule or draft rule for you is Title II, which is the rules governing conservation districts. So Act 690 and 691 of the 2023 legislative session made some changes with conservation districts and the process of election and appointment to the board. So we are mirroring this rule to what the legislation says. And so that will update this rule to where the governing body of a conservation district is responsible for the election and the appointments of directors to those boards. This also does some minor name changes and cleanup to the rule. Since this rule hasn't been touched since transformation back in 2019, there are some things to make sure that this rule is now consistent with other department rules. And so there's some minor cleanup in that. If you look at the markup, there is a lot of red through that rule, and that's just there are entire sections that are now removed because of the authority for that election and appointment and reappointment process is now the governing body of the conservation districts and the commission does not have a role in that process any longer. And so it took big chunks out of there to mirror the law. Happy to take any questions on these changes. And again, this is just the first process of this rule these rule changes. It will, upon approval of this draft, it will then trigger that 30-day public comment period, followed by a public hearing for any changes or concerns or comments that the public would like to make on this rule.
When will that be, Mike?
When will the comment period be? Is that the question?
Was that William Anderson that said that?
Not sure if that was him or Bruce.
No, my question, this is William Anderson, my question was, will we being conservation districts, will we get some help from the state, some guidance from the state on the conduct of the elections?
That has, we have shared any of the documentation and things that we used and had done with AACD and AACDE. But if there are any questions that come up with the elections, my staff and I are happy to answer those questions and assist. The process did not change. What has happened with elections, is remained completely the same. It's just that the reporting and us sending out some of those documents and the ballots and those things, we no longer will do, but the process in which an election is conducted and the timing and everything remains the same.
Okay. Well, that answers my question.
If I might make a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
We did get the forms from Megan and Mary Lee, and we have gone through the process of started the training with the districts to help them understand. Once these rules are a little more clarified, that would make it a little easier. We have already visited with the Secretary of State's office about the report that needs to go to them, and that has been approved and by their legal department. And we're taking it in phases so as not to overwhelm some of our newer employees. But the first phase was just getting that public notice out. So we've done that. And then we'll continue to work with them all the way through until after this first election.
Okay. Thank you.
Megan?
Yes, sir.
Bruce, and I don't know that I ever heard the answer. Public comment period is going to be.
So we will put the notice will be placed on the website, and I would imagine, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, it'll be in a matter of a couple of days into the week, or however long it takes to get the proper notices put out for those, and what's required. So the 30-day public comment period will start within the next week or so. I'm giving us a little bit of time, but Chris, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, Megan, you're right. We completed the preliminary documents. We have to kind of predict when we'll start the public comment period. And what the trigger there is, it actually has to run in the paper first, announcing it. We had proposed that it would run in the paper this upcoming Sunday. Now offices have been closed, and hopefully we can still meet that schedule. But it has to run in the paper. It has to run at least one Sunday. It has to run 3 consecutive days. I think our goal was to run it Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And so if we're still on track to get that out this weekend, then public comment period should start next week. If we're delayed for some reason, then it'll be delayed a week. Does that help?
David?
Mr. Leggett?
These,
Well.
it'll be responses only.
Repeat that
question.
again.
Written responses only.
No.
Serious concern.
No, it's the 30-day comment period is written comments, but there'll be a public hearing where verbal comments can be submitted.
So initially it is
Bill
written
was passed,
comment
but it
only.
was already the law, you know.
That's
I
true.
thought that whenever this bill was passed, already law. Kind of backwards, you know. We should have had some kind of, and then it'd be adopted legislature. But I guess I shows you just how little I know about the process. Question, thank you.
Well, I think you're, I mean, it does seem backwards to me also, Bruce, but I don't know. Like you said, there's a lot I don't understand at all about this.
Well, and one thing I'll say about the rules process, there are times when agencies can amend the rules within their authorities that have been given to them by the state. So that's why the administrative procedures process is set up like that. But in cases where the law changes, then you're basically under a requirement to revise the rules.
The one section gonna be in Arkansas and the other two.
I hope that clarified that.
What do you think, folks? Did that clarify that?
Yes, I'm a little bit more confused now than I was when I first asked the question. What I heard was, if this is the law, gonna be, then why have a comment period? If your comments ain't gonna, they're not gonna amount to nothing, no way.
Because the law requires us to have a comment period through the Administrative Procedures Act for any rule changes. And so even though that it did change the law and the rules reflecting the law, the Administrative Procedures Act requires this process. And so that's why we're doing that.
Change the Administrative Procedures Act then. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Like a big waste of time to go out here and ask for comments when comments are. Be. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I guess you would have the option of bringing it back before the legislation. I mean, I would assume that would be somewhat of a difficult thing to do, but I guess that option is there.
It will go back before the legislature as part of the administrative rules process.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, you need a motion?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. All right. Is there a second?
I'll second William Anderson.
All right. We have a motion and second. Is there any discussion to this motion? If there's no discussion to the motion, all in favor, yes.
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 Opposed, no. And so that passes. Okay, are we ready to move on to the applications for financial assistance from Debbie Dixon, that she always does such a marvelous job of doing this? And
Can everybody hear me okay? Can you see my screen there okay?
Yes.
Okay, Chris says yes, so we're gonna
Got
move
it.
on.
So I have for you today several recommendations for funding and then a couple that are changes to funding. So we're going to start out with our new recommendations, if my screen will advance. There we go. So first up, we have the city of Beebe. They're doing their Hidden Valley subdivision gravity sewer expansion for a total project cost of approximately $3.9 million. We're recommending a loan in an amount of $3,999,730 to the city of Beebe. This is going to be out of the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. Next, we have the city of Walnut Ridge. They're doing a water line service inventory. So this is the lead service line inventory requirement. And then should they find lead service lines, they'll incorporate replacement into the project. The total project cost is $3.6 million. We're recommending $147,600 loan out of the base program. That's the part that's not eligible for the lead service line funding. So that'll be for the main replacement or components related to the main replacement. And then we're also recommending $3,452,400 out of the lead service line funding in a loan. This is all coming out of the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. Next, we have the community water system. They're looking at doing a water treatment plant expansion. This funding is specific to planning and design. It is not for construction. We're recommending a loan in an amount up to $2 million out of the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. Next, we have the Central Arkansas Water. They're doing also their lead and copper rule or lead service line inventory project. We're recommending a loan in an amount of $1 million. This too will come out of the lead service line funding out of the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund.
But you're not charging them interest.
The lead service line funding has a 0% interest rate on that one.
Good.
Since we're required to use that only for lead service line or lead service line eligible fundings, and because folks are required to do that inventory, a 0% lending rate seemed appropriate. They're all direct federal funds. We'll get the money back in the loan and be able to reloan it out with our standard lending rates. Next, we have the Freedom Public Water Authority. They're doing water system improvements for $1,535,455. We're recommending a loan for that amount out of the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. That concludes our new recommendations. Would you like to vote for those, or would you like me to continue with our changes?
I'll tell you what, unless somebody's got an objection, let's just knock these out of the way here and take a vote on this so we can see if anybody has any questions or anything.
I move we accept staff's recommendation. This is Anderson.
And Will Brewer will make the second.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Any discussion on this motion? All in favor, yes?
Yes.
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 Opposed, no. Okay, we accept those recommendations.
Okay. Next, we have the recommendations for changes in funding. First up, we have the Oak Grove Water Users Association. I want to point out for you guys that we made a correction to the total project cost. It is $5,564,060 in total, including the 3% fees. That is all out of the general obligation bond, the GEO bond program. We're recommending today an increase in $1,339,000. That includes the $39,000 of the 3% fee. And that would again be a loan, an additional loan for $1,339,000 out of CGO program. And then next we have the city of Ratcliffe. They're requesting two changes to their previously approved funding and project. They're requesting a change in the scope. They want to change it from to include the tank replacement project This is the one where they had previously been approved for the asbestos cement main replacement project. After some inspections, they realized it was more important to replace the tank than the mains at this point in time. So they're requesting to change the scope to be primarily the tank replacement project, and then they'll do some main replacement for any funding that they might have left over after the tank replacement. And they're also requesting to reduce the dollar amount, the loan amount, from $1.5 million to $1 million. This would come out of the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund program. Any questions on this one? Okay, hearing none. Next up, we have the City of Mena. We also did a correction on this one to the total project cost. The total project cost for the Iron Forks Water Treatment Plant, including this requested increase, is $22,912,500. That includes $6.6 million loan from USDA Rural Development and a $1.5 million grant from USDA Rural Development. They previously got a $7 million loan from the Natural Resources Commission out of the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, and they have come back and asked for an additional $7,750,000 and out of the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. So we're requesting an additional loan for that, or recommending, I should say. Any questions on Mena? That concludes our recommendations for changes to scope and funding. Before I move on to the report, yeah, we'll need a motion on those ones.
All right, what's your pleasure on that, Commission?
So moved.
We got a second?
Second, Anderson.
Okay, we got a motion and second. Any discussion on this? All in favor, yes.
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 Opposed, no. And I hear no opposition. So that funding passes.
Okay,
Yes,
last
David.
from, sorry, did you have something else, Mr. Chairman?
No, ma'am. I said,
Oh.
You're up again, Debbie.
Last for you, I have our report on deobligations of funds. So we have quite a list here. The first one is the City of Clinton. We're deobligating $467,067. That project is complete. Texarkana Water Utilities has elected to decline 3 separate fundings for 3 separate projects. The City of Altheimer has elected to decline their funding for $1.6 million. Lincoln has declined their funding, $1.4 million. North White County Rural Public Facilities Board is declining their funding for $2.7 million. And the City of Truman also is declining their funding for $1.1 million from the Drinking Water State Revolving Funds. Are there any questions on these deobligations? A motion is not required for these. So at that, I would say I conclude my report for you today.
Top-notch job. Good job.
Say
Okay.
decline. I do have a question, Debbie.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
when these funds are deobligated, then what happens with these funds?
They go back into the fund to be reallocated to future projects. So they've not received any cash at this point. The dollars are still in our fund, but it does make them available for future obligations.
Okay, so this does not go back to those cities that were on the waiting list.
This is not related to the ARPA funding. This is the
Okay.
Clean Water and Drinking Water State Revolving Funds, different funding source.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And Debbie, one clarifying question. Most of these were loans, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Wow, what a good-looking husband. I guess it's a
Sorry, I'm
husband.
trying to stop sharing. Ryan, take over.
All right. I guess it's a husband. It might not be I should say a good-looking guy.
There you go. Thank you.
All right, Chairman,
Okay.
are you ready for me?
Yes, Ryan, we're ready. We're ready for you.
All right, so this is perfect. That Joanne's question was perfect timing for my presentation. So we're just going to give you a quick update of where we are on implementing the American Rescue Plan funding that we received from the steering committee in the legislature. Just to give you a little history of where we are to date. So we received approval of $280 million in ARPA funding, American Rescue Plan Act funding. 10 million of that was dedicated to the irrigation projects and has already been dispersed. I believe that funding is complete, leaving $270 million that this commission was to allocate to eligible projects. So if you recall, we opened up the application period the day we got the funding. The staff did a remarkable job of getting everything scored and ready for you for your December 2nd, 2022 meeting. And you at that meeting allocated $270 million, roughly $135 million to water projects and $135 million to wastewater projects. A little bit, wasn't exactly that. So we allocated those funds on December 2nd. And then since that time, we've been working with entities to get their projects going to meet the deadlines, ultimately in the ARPA legislation. And then we put some interim deadlines in there to make sure that the ARPA deadlines could be met. So the first deadline, and it's in red on here because we actually modified this deadline last year. If you recall, we did not have a traditional May meeting last year. That meeting was pushed into June. And so we did require some projects to have a match or a cost share on their ARPA dollars. And so if they did not have those already obtained, they had until the end of June last year. And if you recall our meeting last year in June, you allocated probably the largest amount of dollars ever allocated in one meeting ever, including enough to match everyone's ARPA project if they didn't already have funding. So we had, in order to meet the ultimate deadlines of the ARPA process, we originally had a construction start deadline as of December 31st, 2023. Because we moved our May meeting, we had already extended that deadline to start construction on their projects to the end of this March, and that is the deadline we're currently working under. In addition, I should remind you that in addition to allocating $270 million, you did a $100 million worth of projects on two separate wait lists. One was a water projects wait list, and the other was a wastewater projects wait list. Roughly equal amounts on those two lists, 50 million. And what you authorized us to do is, as funds were deobligated, we could then go in the order of those lists, award projects without having to come back to the commission, so we could keep this funding going. I should note on here that the big deadline we're working on is all funds under ARPA have to be dispersed by December 31st, 2026, or the state will lose them, meaning the projects will lose them. So we are being very, very strict on our deadlines. In addition, I want to note, because this is going to come up over the next couple months, we asked everybody, and they all certified to us when you awarded them these funds that they could meet the deadlines, even though we knew they were very, very quick in the world of construction projects to meet. So every project had certified to us that they could meet these deadlines, or they would not have been eligible for the funds or not to accept them. So kind of where we are to date that I wanted to give you an update. So of the projects funded, we have 107 have agreements fully executed. And the only ones that don't have agreements executed at this point are projects that have other funding from you. So if all they had was ARPA funding, or if they had ARPA funding plus their own funding, or were getting money from someone other than Natural Resources, we went ahead and entered into an agreement, and we are working through those projects. For all our co-funded projects that may have ARPA money and your Clean Water State Revolving Fund money, or your Drinking Water State Revolving Fund money, or one of the 3 state programs, we actually enter that agreement with them at the same time we close on the loan with those programs. The reason being is there's a rule that if you use $1 of state revolving fund programming, which is the federal programs, you have to meet those requirements for every bit of the project. You can't split a project into this is the ARPA funding and this is the state revolving fund program. So we're entering into those agreements at the time of closing. So we are working to get those completed by the end of March deadline. Typically you bid and then we close on their loan, on their bonds. But we have already dispersed, you can see over 57 million of the 270 million allocated to water and wastewater projects. So that's roughly 21% of the funding. In 1 year, that's actually pretty good. That's about where we thought we would be because, you know, most projects we fund are just in the planning stages when we authorize them. They have to go through full design, ADQ and Department of Health approvals, and do a lot of processes, acquire the easements, get bid docs ready, and take bids before we'll disperse funding. And in addition, projects are having to provide their cost share first, and then we come in with the ARPA funding. So 21% is really good. Over the next 6 months, I think you'll probably see that number double or triple. You're going to see a lot of funding go out since we did require all bids to be back by the end of March. And then notices to proceed issued to contractors. We anticipate a lot of money going out. However, we don't anticipate the last bit of money going out until November of 2026. These projects are very lengthy. A lot of the lead times on equipment right now may be year or 2 years. So even though a project has to issue a notice to proceed by the end of March, you know, that doesn't mean that they're going to be able to have the pumps or the equipment in place, especially on our larger treatment plant rehabilitation projects. However, to date, we have deobligated some funds. So you can see 2 projects decline their funding altogether. And 3 projects there have had some funds remaining. So we're working through that process. As you know, we don't just award grants and send out money, and then we reimburse for expenses incurred. If we get to the end of the project and they haven't taken all the funds, in that case, some funds can get deobligated. In a couple of these cases, you had already funded it. They had applied for it, but you had already funded it through some principal forgiveness funding in some cases. And so obviously they didn't need those funds since those were already grant dollars. So you can see we had 1.367 million that we have documented as deobligated. So we did go ahead late last year or mid last year and award Cleveland County, which is waitlist number 1 under the drinking water program, a $1 million award. Now, I will tell you, you're probably going to see soon. I think they may be declining that funding also now. They've decided to go a different direction, working with their neighbor. So we are anticipating some additional dollars in the next month, maybe 2 months, maybe some significant amounts of folks that either have held on to the money but have decided not to move forward, or they just can't meet the deadlines in the project, in the requirements coming back. So we do anticipate being able to fund folks on the wait list. Now you can see up above, most of the money we got back to begin with was drinking water money. So that's where we made the decision to move with the number 1 on the drinking water list. However, as those funds come back, we're going to award off the wait list as makes sense to fully fund projects. So of the projects, we do have 61 projects that I say currently under construction or at least have received their bids, and we have concurred in bids. And once again, you'll see that number climb significantly over the next 45 days as all these projects are going to be bidding to meet that end of March deadline. So of that also, 25 projects are 100% complete. Even though we have not been able to disperse all the funds to all 25, that's not actually the same 25 that you see above that say fully dispersed. Even though some projects are complete, in order to get funds from us to maybe reimburse funds they spent on their own, they have to prove they've met all the criteria of the program. So our next steps, and then I'll answer any questions you have, is we're working hard to get projects under construction by March 31st, 2024. I will tell you, and I'm going to keep saying this, the staff of the Natural Resources Division, especially water development, and now even some of our water resources folks that we've brought into the mix, have been doing phenomenal work to get these projects going and to meet the needs of our customers. We did not gain any additional staff when we took on this this burden of or this pleasure of, I guess, of handling this 270 million. And then on top of it, what we never anticipated was this huge influx of money under the IIJA funding. So we have handled historic levels of funding with no additional staff. And as you know, the job market goes these days, usually understaffed as we try to keep positions filled. But we're working hard to get everyone under construction by the end of March. In addition, I want to give some thanks to our DEQ and Department of Health partners. They have done great work to make sure that these projects get the approvals from them that they need to meet our deadlines. So we're looking to make sure that any project that bids, that contract better say that they're done definitely before the end of 26, but really we need them done months in advance of that end of December so we can get the funds out. You know, you can't send us a bill on December 31st in 2026 and expect us to be able to disperse those funds in hours. So every bid document that goes out is going to have a completion date before the end of 2026. We need to be prepared, even though we are requiring folks to bid by the end of March, but as you saw today on Debbie's additional funding list, bids are coming back higher than funding, right? Sometimes we've gotten lucky and they've been in the contingency, but we do anticipate some bids coming back needing additional funding. And if that project can still get done by the other deadlines, we anticipate a list of increased funding coming to you in May for any project that bid and is out of the money, but still wants to take advantage of their ARPA dollars. We anticipate, like I mentioned, awarding waitlist projects deobligated funds with a caveat. We're going to go down the wait list, but those projects have to be able of meeting the project completion deadlines. So let's say, I don't remember who number 2 on the wait list was for each one, or number 1 on the wastewater. But if we go to them to award them ARPA dollars and they say they can't be done by the end of 26 or they can't bid in a reasonable time period, then we'll have to move on to projects that can spend the dollars by those deadlines. And then once again, we'll be working with projects to get them completed by that December 31st, 2026 deadline or fully dispersed. It's not our goal to hand $1 back to anybody on this funding. We're going to spend all 270 million on projects that are new projects or even projects we've already completed if there end up being dollars left over. And with that, I'll answer any questions on ARPA.
We have any questions for Ryan?
I do have one question. If you spend, I don't know, 269,500,000 and you've got $500,000 left over to spend, can you partially fund a project with that ARPA money?
We can, and as I just mentioned, we will not hand $1 back if it's up to me. Meaning that any project that got completed and work done after March of 2021 was potentially eligible for these funds, even if they're already complete and we have to use this money to reimburse them for loans. But from my opinion, there's no use giving any dollars back. We need every dollar we have to go for these projects. And, as you know, we did 1.3 billion in funding last fiscal year. Y'all did approved. We have lots of needs in addition to the 270. So giving $1 back would be a failure in my book.
So getting rid of the money is not an issue.
If it's up to me, we're going to get rid of it one way or another to projects that were complete, that were started after March of 2021. I mean, that may mean we come back to you in a year and go, hey, we can't start any new projects off the wait list, but we're going to have this money coming back. We'd like you to allocate it to these projects that were already completed, but meet the criteria.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Ryan. So
Okay.
Ryan, those projects that let's say maybe weren't awarded ARPA funds up front, but might be on the wait list, but decided to move forward with their project, they'll be in much better shape, obviously, should we get down to them because they've already started, correct?
Exactly. So that's that criteria of, can you meet the deadlines? Because even if you're on the wait list and you can't meet the end of 26 deadline, that sounds like a long way off, but in construction time, that's tomorrow. So if you've already started, even if you use your own funding, that will be a criteria we'll eventually have to use to whether you get awarded off the wait list. So we've encouraged projects to move forward. Even if you didn't, especially if you're near the top of that wait list, don't wait on these dollars. Move forward, because we knew there was a good chance we'd have funding deobligated, even in addition to the 1.3 million we've already seen.
Okay, good question. I'm sorry, did someone have a question there?
I was gonna ask Ryan a question.
Yes, sir.
Oh, this money, and we had that waiting list. Was gonna tell folks that if you're like in the top 5 planning, odds are you probably gonna get funded. Right. Correctly.
Yeah, we've been advising everyone, if you're near the top of those wait lists, we do intend, now we couldn't promise because we don't know, but we anticipated funds coming back to at least knock off the top couple in each of those wait lists, if they can meet the deadlines.
Okay, we got other questions for Ryan?
David Hillsden, representing DeVos Bluff, Arkansas. I think we've got a project at number 4 on the waiting list. The governor's proclamation, did that affect us on this waiting list?
No, our already allocated ARPA dollars were in no way affected by the proclamation. So the only thing right now is, if you notice, so we have about 368,000 we haven't allocated that have come back on the wait list. We're waiting to get enough to fund a full project. If we get down to number 4, then they, we're going to balance looking at how much of the money comes back from drinking water projects and how much comes back from wastewater projects, and kind of move down the wait list in that manner, because there's no priority between the two wait lists. But if we get down to number 4, nothing in the governor's proclamation would stop you from being funded, only your ability to complete the project under the deadlines.
Okay, that's all I needed. Thank you so much for your efforts.
All right, other questions we have for Ryan? I know these are important questions. We have other questions? Well, if we don't have any other questions, we're gonna move on then. Okay, next up, we have our partners report. Are we ready to start that, Chris? I guess we are. All right, we're going to start our partners report. And the first report we have is NRCS Mike Sullivan. Mike, are you ready?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Good deal. Good morning, everybody. And at NRCS, we're just happy to be working even through this inclement weather and working some remotely. We're still in a continuing resolution through this week. So we're hoping to see that extended so we can continue working until we get full appropriations approved. We're well into another very busy year, especially with the additional Inflation Reduction Act funding that's been provided to us. This year, we have significant additional funding. And if you just look at EQIP, our Environmental Quality Incentives Program, where we are entering into contracts, this money is all for producers for implementing conservation, addressing critical natural resource concerns. This year, our initial allocation, we have nearly $90 million, with more than half of that coming from IRA funds. And similarly, we have a robust allocation in the Conservation Stewardship Program of $42 million. So with those two being working lands programs for agricultural producers across the state, we have $130 million, and probably the most ever allocation I've seen for EQIP. And that should help us at least to begin address some of the backlog in our applications and demand for EQIP assistance. We've tested a new approach to help us move through the application process faster. We're calling it Act Now. It's a different type approach, and it's not for all of our funding, but we know that it can work well for some. And it's a different way of processing applications. Instead of waiting till we get everybody's application and ranking every single one of them, we take an application, we evaluate it. If it meets a certain threshold where we know that it's addressing some primary resource concerns, we can go ahead and approve it and immediately move to contract development and then implementation. So we're going to use that this year. We're in the process of doing significant outreach statewide this week. And for EQIP, we'll be using it for our high tunnels, our soil health practices, and energy practices. And then in the Conservation Stewardship Program, also urban conservation. So we're excited to see how that will work through this year. We've got a couple of funding opportunities coming up very quickly for partners. One is specific to using Inflation Reduction Act funds. We'll have nearly $4 million available, and things we'll be looking at will be outreach and marketing strategies to help educate the public, agricultural producers on the benefits of climate smart practices, as well as attracting new customers that we haven't worked with before. We'll also be looking for help with boots on the ground with staff.
We're working.
We'll also be, not sure who else we got going there. We'll also be looking for additional boots on the ground to help us with the workload and developing plans and contracts funded through IRA. And then we also have some practices that are not fully approved as mitigating practices of greenhouse gases. And so we'll be looking for some help for documentation of those where we think we have those benefits with irrigation practices, specifically irrigation storage reservoirs and tailwater recovery systems. And then quickly after that funding notice, hopefully by early March, we'll have our regular funding announcement out where we typically fund district agreements, retiree positions, and other partnering opportunities to help us address priorities that we have. So you may want to look for that as well. And then final thing I mentioned is our district agreements. For a couple of years, we've been working on updating what has been called cooperative working agreements. They came out with some new interpretations, and that's required us to develop 2 agreements to do what we used to do in the past. And one is called a Memorandum of Understanding. We've worked with Chris and the Natural Resources Division to get all those in place over the last year. And now there's another agreement where we document how we share resources. And this gives us the ability to do things like share space and computers and equipment. And we've had a lot of help from AACD working through that this year. As I understand it, I think we've got most all of those except maybe a couple in place now. So we're hopefully good in terms of getting all that done once we get the 2 pending ones in place. So we're really expecting another great year. We know it's going to be fast and furious and high workload. We appreciate the partnership and the help and the support from everybody here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mac. Good job. Any questions for Mac? If we don't have, we're going to move to Debbie Moreland and AACD.
Well, I'll try to cover most of this as quickly as I can. We do have a lot going on right now. As you know, we have the Arkansas Grown Conferences coming up down in Hot Springs. There will be 2 days of workshops that will be done in partnership with NRCS that will cover a variety of topics for beginning farmers. It will go everything about what is a conservation district. Then it'll talk about, you know, what does NRCS do? What does FSA do? But our goal is to try to help a lot of these folks who are not traditional clients of ours to help them better understand what we're doing. So we'll be down there doing that. We will have a panel discussion of some of our, it'll be Butch Edgars and James Meeks, who are both past Conservation District Director, but they both did specialty crops. And they're going to talk about a little different. Butch did a small specialty crop operation of flowers and blueberries, etc., where James Meeks has thousands of acres, but he does all sorts of produce. So we're going to have a panel discussion to talk about what worked, what didn't work, what were the lessons learned. So we'll do that. And then from that, we've got a meeting, our NACD meeting in San Diego. John McAlpine, the president, Jerry Don Clark, our past president and NACD delegate, myself and Jeanette will be going to that. That we will be down there for 3 or 4 days, and then we'll hopefully, even though there are times when you think, gee, I really want another meeting, there's always something to be gained, and so we will do that. Okay, then when we get back from there, we will turn around and we have several things getting ready for our annual meeting. As you know, our annual meeting is coming up, and it'll be in partnership with you. We will have your commission meeting in the morning, then we will do a luncheon. I've been looking at the idea of during the luncheon of possibly having a speaker. If that's something you'd be receptive to. We used to do that years ago. We always had a speaker during that luncheon. So I just want to make you aware of that, and you can let me know if there's somebody that you particularly recommend. Okay, then on the second day, we start our annual meeting. We have the Associate Chief, Louis Aspey, that will be coming in. He'll be our featured luncheon speaker. We have a pretty broad agenda. It's going to go everything from WOTUS and conservation in the Farm Bill with Harrison Pittman to we will have one on feral hogs. We will also have one that will be with USGS, that they've got a report they'd like to talk about declining groundwater. So we're looking at a variety of things because we realize our natural resource concerns are dramatically different from one side of the state to the other. The other thing is Jeanette Hale, who's on here. She is the new AACDE president, and really pleased to be working with her. We've decided we're going to start doing a joint meeting once a month. That way it'll be a Zoom meeting, but it will give the districts an opportunity to bring forward any concerns they might have. We will continue to work with them on the district elections. They're right. Not a lot has changed, except that there are some things that they will need to know that they are fully responsible for, such as getting that report into the Secretary of State. And we did work through that process so that way as you know, we have 25 districts. We'll have an election this year, 25 the next year, and then 25 the following year. So, and we have a lot of new district employees that may need some guidance on how to do that. They sent us the forms that were pretty much free of any sort of logos or anything. And so what we're explaining to the districts, they need to put their letterheads on it. They are the ones that are the election committee. The only thing AACD does is we do record keeping, and we provide support and training as needed. Otherwise, each district is, in fact, because they're an entity of government, they can, in fact, act as their own election commission. The 3 elected are the governance body, and the 2 appointed are the actual election committee that oversee and certify the election. So we're working our way through it. We think it's going to work out just fine. It's just going to be, at first, it's going to be a little bit new for some of them until they realize that it's really not that different than what they originally had. So we agreed that ACP, the Arkansas Conservation Partnership, that we'd start trying to have weekly meetings on Tuesday morning at 9:30. We've been kind of knocked off thing because of the weather, but just a real quick 30-minute meeting. Is there anything somebody needs to report? Is there anything somebody needs to bring forward that they're having issues with? And so we'll do that as well. The other thing, and the last thing, is we are getting ready to get approval for a new license plate. And this license plate will be dedicated to, it's called, at the bottom, it's Educating Future Conservationists. It will be dedicated to doing things like scholarships, Arkansas Envirothon, our forestry clinic, things like that. Our scholarship amount is starting to go down a little bit, so we need to replenish that. The license plates have been wonderful. That we take in about 60,000 a year. Unfortunately, because it's based on population, it tends to all go to 3 big districts. And that was not our intent, but that's how it turned out. So this one will not be done that way. It will be just basically a set of restricted funds that are set aside for that purpose. And then it will be used to sponsor scholarships or whatever it might be. So having said that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Debbie? Good job, Debbie.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, all right, so we're gonna move on to the Extension Service, U of A Cooperative Extension Service with Mike Daniels.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to be a part of this as I give the University of Arkansas Division of Agriculture Extension report. First things first, I wanted to commend the staff, especially Kate Wentz and Katie Mann and Chris Colclaser on hosting the fall 2023 Hypoxia Task Force in Fayetteville. I had a chance to speak on behalf of an organization I'm part of called Sarah 46, which is a consortium of 12 land-grant universities that border the Mississippi River. But I think it was a great meeting. We got to provide a tour on the Discovery Farm the next morning on the Marley Discovery Farm. We talked about poultry production and water quality issues associated with that. But I just think they did an outstanding job of planning that and hosting that, and just wanted to bring that up. Second thing I wanted to talk about is that we have released the recommendations from the Nutrient Reduction Strategy Subcommittee on Research and Innovations. We came up with 8 recommendations that we think would help if we could find funding or accomplish or start on these things that would help us in our nutrient reduction strategy and our effort. One of particular interest, I think, is trying to get all the partners together to see if we couldn't come up with some type of voluntary reporting system for implementation of conservation practices, so that we can show that we're doing a lot of activities and making steps in the right direction. The third thing I wanted to talk about, it was my pleasure and honor to be asked to participate in both the AACD and the Arkansas Conservation Partnership strategic planning sessions in December. I think the value of that is just the discussion. And even though it was moderated, very valuable discussion and ideas put forth that I think will really help us as a partnership in the future. On January 2nd of this year, we had a change in leadership and extension. Dr. John Anderson, who was formerly the department head of agricultural economics up at the University of Arkansas, assumed leadership. And I think we're very excited and very fortunate to have him as our new director. He's got a lot of enthusiasm, very, very sharp. He spent years working for American Farm Bureau, and he is originally from Stone County. So he's a native Arkansan. With that, I will answer any questions, and that will be I did want to mention that we do have some climate smart projects going on. The division is not currently involved in rice ones like the AACD and Department of Agriculture, but we are involved in forages, pasture land, corn and cotton and soybeans. And so we just met with USDA on one of them for the cotton yesterday. So we're still trying to get through that process. I think we're the last one to get finally approved, but we're looking forward to working with other partners and doing joint training and that sort of thing. So thank you. I'll answer any questions if anybody has any.
Okay, anybody have questions for Mac? Thank you, Mac. Good job. All right, no questions. We're going to move on to UAPB, and I believe Dr. White's going to give that report. Am I correct on that?
Yes, sir, I am.
Thank you.
Okay. Welcome. Okay. So, am I able to share my screen so I can, let me see. Okay. Okay. Okay, so yes, I'll be giving the report of what we're doing here at the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. And first, I just want to start off talking about our newly funded project that we got from NIFA that is going to, offset the establishment of a UAPB Discovery Farm Educational Center. And so right now we're in the process of getting that started. And within the UAB Discovery Farm Educational Center is going to be a center where we can educate and train farmers. You know, we currently have Dr. Henry English, which worked with the farmer at UAPB Small Farms, but we want to make it a little bigger than and reach more people, not only just the farmers, but through this educational center, we also want to be able to reach our youth. And so the UAPB Discovery Farm Educational Center will be established on campus here in Pine Bluff. We're also establishing a UAPB Aquaculture Discovery Farm Station, which will be in Lone Oak, Arkansas. And so this is another climate smart station that will be able to reach our fish farmers, those who are left. And also, again, we're trying to reach our youth at K through 12 to get them more aware into ag careers and aquaculture careers. And so along with this, we will be partnering, well, this is wrong. We're not partnering with Monticello on this one, but we'll be partnering with Mike Daniels with Arkansas Discovery Farms. And so we're in the process now of meeting to get this up and running off the ground. Another project that we have is that we just received new funding for is the new USDA Forest Service grant, which was $2 million. And so Dr. McGowan and Damian White submitted a proposal, and right before we got out for school, he found out that he received that money. And so that project, we hope soon to be, this semester, be up and running. And it's titled Rising from Roots, Addressing Historical Health Disparities and Environmental Justice Through Urban Forestry at 1890 Land Grant Universities. And within this project, we'll be partnering with the University of Arkansas at Monticello. And with this project also, we have a component where we're gonna not only you know, work with our farmers, but everything that we're trying to do is try to raise awareness of what ag careers are in the minority community, the social disadvantaged communities. And so a lot of youth or a lot of people in those communities have a misconception what ag really is and what aquaculture and fishery really is. And so we'll be doing that. And also I oversee our 1890 scholarship program, which was a scholarship that's put out there to try to get students to major in ag, fisheries, aquaculture, food and science careers. And so that has been very helpful. The original grant amount for that when we had wrote it was $2 million. And so since then we've received maybe almost $2 million extra in funding to fund students for scholarships in undergrad. And these are for incoming freshmen and also transfer students. And so we've been very successful with awarding money and also getting students to major in that area. But we still run into the default where when we're trying to recruit students to even work on those grants, which we allow high school students to come and work on those grants and also undergraduate training, but we still have students that have this misconception what ag is. And so that is our target, to try to raise awareness of what this area really is. Another thing that we're in the progress, we attended a summit back in, I guess it was in December in Fayetteville, and we were able to meet with some of the people in the chair at that time of Poultry Science Department. And so we are looking at reestablishing our partnership with the University of Arkansas and also working with Tyson Foods. We had been without a poultry science teacher for a while, and so now we have two animal science teacher and also a poultry science teacher, who now, the reason why I'm stepping in today, Dr. McGowan originally was supposed to have a meeting along with the new faculty members to meet to reestablish that partnership with U of A. We still have it, but we want to make it better. Not only where our students from UAPB will be able to transition to the University of Arkansas to finish their last year in our 3+1 program, but make sure they have a good transition by supplying them scholarship funds and also a place to stay. And with that also, those who want to matriculate into the graduate program, they're working on a partnership where they can, once they get there, they graduate and they can go right into the graduate program. Another thing Tyson Foods involvement is we're working out how we can send students for internships. And so that meeting is, the second meeting is in progress as of today. supposedly, and that's the reason why I'm stepping in for Dr. McGowan. Another thing is, the last thing I have to talk about this year, I have the pleasure to serve on the board for the mini land grant conference that we're trying to bring in Arkansas in 2025. We had our first meeting last month, and we're talking about possibly having that in Northwestern Arkansas. And so I think that's a good thing that Arkansas was chosen to be able to hold this conference, and it's not in stone yet, but we're looking to have this conference in Northwestern Arkansas. And that's all I have for the report for the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff.
Okay, good job, Dr. White. Appreciate that. Any questions for Dr. White? Well, thank you very much for that report. Okay, we'll move on to, well, there he is. Okay, Drew Westerman with USGS. Drew?
Hey. Good morning. Thanks for having me. Update will be fairly short. In case you're wondering, snow and ice definitely impacts our stream gauges. We've got a handful down across the state. It's really because of two different occurrences. One, our lines that are in the water freeze, but actually more commonly, we get ice on our antennas and it delays and causes an issue with the transmission of the data to the satellites, and that's how we get our real-time data. However, that data logs internally, so when we're able to visit and fix it later this week, early next, we'll be able to backload it. So hopefully we'll be able to minimize any data interruptions as far as missing data. And also give you some insight into what we do during snow days. We're not just out there making snow angels. We're actually taking this opportunity to work our records. All of our data, stream gauge data, water quality data, groundwater data, is reviewed on about a 150-day process. That's kind of our moving target. And so we're taking this time while we have some office and homework in order to ensure our records are approved. And what that means is that they have reached a scrutiny of basically 3 different levels of approval, 3 different individuals looking at that. And then it locks it down and allows the state, public, private entities to be able to grab that data and know that it's not going to change. So that's kind of what we're doing, or we're waiting to get back out in the field in order to make repairs on our precip and our stream flow gauges impacted by the ice. We're also working to inventory the Sparta wells come about 1st of April. You'll likely hear one more update from me before we kick that off. We're going to be doing that synoptic where we're collecting water levels from both the alluvial and Sparta. And I mentioned the highlight of Sparta is that last year we've noticed some of the wells that we have traditionally gone to have either changed access or are no longer viable. So what we're doing is we're trying to get an inventory of new wells to add to that network. And both the alluvial and Sparta, we sample about 300 within those each individual aquifers about twice a year. And we do that in cooperation with NRD, NRCS, the county conservation districts. And related to that topic, we're still hoping to meet and discuss in greater detail with Chris and Ryan's team this Friday, to where we'll be looking at the results from our groundwater analysis I just mentioned, but also hoping to have a new version of the water well driller database and website go live here shortly after it gets approval from the NRD staff. Excited about that. Again, talking about the innovation or moving towards innovative mapping mobile to help with in-field submissions of those new water wells. And a lot of that is also going to trickle down to the water use database application that the team will hopefully give a presentation in more detail about the improvements that we have been able to make in cooperation with NRD staff. That wraps up my report. Happy to take any questions if you have it.
Thank you, Drew. Questions for Drew? All right. Good job, Drew. All right. We're going to move on to ADEQ and Bailey Taylor.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, commissioners and director. Thank you for having me. I'm Bailey Taylor, the Deputy Associate Director for the Office of Water Quality. That's a new role for me, and Stacy may have mentioned that last quarter. I believe she spoke. She's the new Associate Director for Office of Water Quality. I had formerly been the Associate Administrator for E&E, so DEQ Office of Water is not new to me, but I am new to this role. So thank you for having me. And I just wanted to share, we've talked about the applications for the funding this morning, and we just appreciate our role in the review process. It gives us an opportunity to prioritize some of those modification permits and any CAOs or anything we have with those facilities to help move it along so they can meet their deadlines for the ARPA funding. In November, we went to the Gulf Hypoxia meeting in Fayetteville, or last quarter, and that was a great job. It was a wonderful event, and so we look forward to engaging on future issues. And we have finalized a few documents, public service announcements rather, for wastewater treatment facilities in regard to the upcoming eclipse. We're expecting a huge visitor influx, and so that will affect wastewater treatment plants. And so we just want to give them a few pointers. So that will be available on our website, and we're happy to share that with you all. And that concludes my report.
Okay, Bailey, thank you very much, and welcome.
Thank you.
Do we have questions for Bailey? Okay, let's move on to the Corps of Engineers then.
Good morning. Yes, this is Jason Funkhauser with the Little Rock District. I had surgery on my ear last Friday, so I have to leave the bandages off for the next 3 weeks. So I'm going to leave my camera off for everybody's sake. I have 3 projects to update you guys on. The first is what Chris talked about earlier, is the Arkansas Water Plan project. The bids came in from when we solicited bids for the contract, and they came in higher than we had estimated. And so there's been some back and forth over the past month to bring those costs down to closer to what we had estimated. About 10 days ago, we reached a consensus, our contracting folks have. So now we're in the process of formalizing the award contract. That should happen in the next couple of days. Once that's happened, we will almost immediately have a kickoff meeting with ANRD staff, with Chris and Ryan and others as appropriate, and start moving forward to having these stakeholder meetings beginning next month sometime. The second project we've got with you guys is the Northwest Arkansas Flood Study, where we're examining impacts from development on the Illinois River basin, primarily as it's in Washington and Benton counties. Right now, we do have the model developed. It is calibrated. We're actually running scenarios right now. We're testing the sensitivity to the land use changes. So we should have those buttoned up probably sometime in the next couple of months, and finish running out the scenarios. That project is slated to finish up this coming November. And then the last project is one that we haven't officially started with you guys. We're working through the process of generating a scope and a cost and a schedule, but we're very close to having something. And that's the levee project, where we're helping assess the levees across the state of Arkansas. We're working with our headquarters folks. There's a lot of interest from headquarters in helping states do this. Arkansas is the first state that they've ever worked with on this, so we're kind of breaking some new ground here. So that's pretty exciting. We should have a scope finalized sometime in the next couple of weeks, and we'll be working on an agreement for Chris's signature. We're looking very forward to that project. I have a feeling it's going to be similarly high profile as the water plan. Going to be a good project. We're looking forward to it. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you very much. Good job. Questions? Okay, well, all those reports were good, and we certainly appreciate our partners giving us reports. So we're going to move on to other business here. Chris, there seemed like there's something I'm forgetting about other. You guys can be thinking about other business that you have, but is there something I'm leaving off on other business?
Yes, sir. It was going to be just a reminder that our next commission meeting is going to come really fast. It's going to be on February 28th. So we're meeting back to back months. And so that was just going to be a reminder for everyone that we will meet February 28th. We'll meet that morning in conjunction with the Arkansas Association of Conservation Districts meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. So everybody mark your calendar for February the 28th. That's just a little over a month away.
Is that going
sir?
This is William Anderson. That's going to replace our March meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Okay. Thank you, William. That's a good point. How about other business that anybody can think that needs to come before us? Chris, you have other business that we should take up?
No, sir.
Well, all right. So, does anybody have any words of wisdom you could give us before we go to start this new
Stay
year?
warm. Just stay warm.
Oh, look, we're getting good advice already this early in the year. All right.
It can be rough out there.
All right. Well, good meeting. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, staff. We appreciate you so much. You did a wonderful, wonderful job. Thanks for taking care of us and taking care of the business that we need to do here. So with that said, we're going to adjourn. Goodbye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.